Hello, I'm David Toth, and welcome to a review of I Want to Be Your Heart, a series of concept albums by the Japanese band Tsukuyomi and songwriter Yuri Kannon, which also includes a Vocaloid song, which also includes a few companion novellas, which also includes a series of voice dramas and concert tours. Confused yet? If I didn't have a PhD in needlessly obtuse mixed media stories, I probably would be too. But it's okay, because today we're going to break down the story of I Want to Be Your Heart. We'll peer into the lives of its two tragic main characters, and see how 13 songs managed to tell a better story than most anything else I saw this year. So what is I Want to Be Your Heart? I Want to Be Your Heart is a story about finding a reason to live. Throughout its 13 plus 1 songs, 3 novellas, 4 voice dramas, and ongoing concerts, it asks and then answers the question of what makes life worth living, examined through the lives of its two main characters, the musicians Yuma and Rino. Rino is a short-haired girl who hates the world and finds her own life meaningless, while Yuma is a long-haired girl who struggles to find purpose and give herself a legacy. A chance meeting between them spirals out to change both of their lives forever, resulting in the girls finding answers to the questions that haunted them, though perhaps not in the ways that the other wants most. Through love, longing, and grief, Yuma and Rino meet, grow close, and then part ways, all while searching for what makes a life worth living. Before we get into the story, though, we should go over how exactly I Want to Be Your Heart is told. The story started with a Vocaloid song of the same name that was released prior to the band Tsukuyomi being formed. In brief, the song tells more or less the full story of Rino, describing her hatred for the falseness of the world, how that changed when she met Yuma, how Yuma died more likely from suicide, and how Rino kept living in a world without her. This being the base for the rest of the story vitally makes it a foregone conclusion. The listener, the entire time, is privy to the fact that Rino will inevitably end up alone in a world without Yuma, the main questions being how she will resolve to keep living and what led Yuma to the edge. Following the formation of the band Tsukuyomi years later, I Want to Be Your Heart was retold in 2 parts, episode Rino and episode Yuma. The first being a series of songs told from Rino's perspective following the suicide of her lover, about how she copes with Yuma's death while being incapable of escaping it, while the latter follows Yuma's perspective from when she first met Rino to when she resolved to kill herself, with the final song, Sing the Moon, looping back around to tell how Rino ultimately chose to live in a world without the one she loved most. The novels and voice dramas provide insight into the girls' headspaces at various points of the story, and while deeply characterizing, I don't consider them vital to understanding the plot or feeling the pathos of the story. Of course, I'll be sure to provide the most important details as they come, though. Now that we understand what I Want to Be Your Heart literally is, let's ask the much more important question of what it actually is. Yuma and Rino are 2 girls who, for their own reasons, don't fit in and have some active resentment for the world around them. They first met each other on a rainy day when Yuma shared an umbrella with Rino at the bus stop. At that moment, Rino thought that perhaps not everyone in the world was as awful as she imagined, a thought that would consume her being when she later found that same girl singing her heart out in the city on a snowy day. Rino approached the girl that had offered her shelter from the rain and asked her for the name of her song. Yuma smiled and told her that it was called The Reason for Existence. Yuma was a girl who constantly struggled against what her own reason for existence was, and so she wrote a song which proudly belted that life does have a meaning, and that, in spite of all the pain, it can still be beautiful. Creating something for another, having an impact, she determined, was the greatest achievement in life. From that point on, Rino became enamored with Yuma and the two became close. Yuma taught her to play piano and guitar and soon found that Rino was a prodigy, quickly learning the concepts and having a natural talent for composition. This only brought the two of them closer. Yuma shows Rino that the world isn't as awful as she thought, that there are people that are brilliant and beautiful out there so long she's willing to walk with her head held high. While Rino shows Yuma that you don't need to change the world or save a life to say that your own is meaningful, that having a connection to another person and seeing the joy in their eyes and the love they have for you can be enough to keep you going. Fate, however, is not abundantly kind. Loss and tragedy are an inevitable part of being alive, and such it was that the lovers were torn apart when Yuna lost her hearing. The girl who found her answer to life's meaning had it torn away from her in an instant. She would have been fine singing every day and writing songs with the girl she'd grown to love. But music, the very thing that united her and Rino, was taken from her. She can never again sing a song with the girl she loved, or hear her voice as she called out for her. And in that darkness, Yuma collapsed. At the end of the line, with her reason for existence torn from her, Yuma chose a different end. Seeing that Rino had a gift, a natural talent that she did not, Yuma left her dreams with the one that she loved, killing herself and leaving her behind. Rino could become a musician in her place and change the world with the songs that she wrote. Perhaps then, if Rino becomes someone special, it would have meant something for Yuma to have been alive as well. How foolish that she couldn't see that the only thing Rino wanted was her. Following Yuma's death, Rino lost herself in grief. In her darkness, she considers following her lover into death, but kept living because she knew that wasn't what Yuma would have wanted. And so, with the light of her life stolen from her, she did the only thing she could. She kept singing. Taking all of her longing and pain, Rino wrote a song called Moonlight at Midday, where she recalled Yuma and the time they spent together, trying to bid her off in her heart. The song became wildly popular, launching Rino into stardom. Indeed, just as Yuma had predicted, Rino had the talent to become something wonderful. Rino kept writing song after song, but every one of them was constantly and invariably about Yuma at its heart. Music was what brought them together and went on to become an outlet in which Rino would write love letters to a girl who would never smile for her again. In each line, her love and longing bled through as Rino struggled to find an answer to Yuma's question, a reason for existence in a world without her. If they never would have met, neither girl would have hurt. Perhaps Yuma would have been miserable, but at the very least she might be alive. The sorrow and the pain would never have consumed them and left them hopeless. At the very least, Rino knew that she would happily give away her fame and her music for another day by Yuma's side. But in that, she saw the contradiction. What Rino wanted most was Yuma herself. If they hadn't met, while perhaps they wouldn't have suffered, neither girl would have been saved and found the love that changed their world. Even though it came to an end, the days where Yuma sang with her in the classroom were the most precious to Rino. She wouldn't give them up for anything. And so, she decided not to lament her life. Your reason for existence is something you create for yourself. For Rino, that answer came in keeping Yuma alive through her music, hoping that one day she might be able to help someone, to become their heart the way that she was sure that, even then, Yuma was hers. If Rino could have one wish granted, she would have wanted to save Yuma, after all. To look her in the eyes and through her suffering and say, I want to be your heart. That is, in broad strokes, the story of I Want to Be Your Heart. But to simply convey it as such is to miss what exactly makes the story so special. Put simply, we should now ask ourselves why any human would want to tell a story primarily in 13+1 pieces of music instead of something normal like a book. To answer that, I'm going to ask a pretty stupid question, but an important one nonetheless. What is music? Music, songs, are essentially two things, sound and poetry. If you're going to tell a story primarily through the medium of music, you should seek to make the most of these elements, to bind them together and achieve something that you couldn't in plain prose, and that's the power of I Want to Be Your Heart. Rino and Yuma are both musicians, and such it is that all of the music in the story is completely diegetic. To explain this, let's briefly compare I Want to Be Your Heart to the Kagura Project. The Kagura Project is a popular Vocaloid song series from the early 2010s, but unlike I Want to Be Your Heart, almost all of the music in the Kagura Project is non-diegetic. Take Lost Time Memory, the very famous song about the main character Shintaro Kisaragi. The song is about his feelings and struggles across the multiple lives he lived, culminating in him finally accepting the loss of his best friend. However, the song is telling his story. It's not literal words coming out of his mouth. There is no point where Shintaro is actually singing Lost Time Memory. It's just a piece of music about him. However, there is a second song about Shintaro called Tomei Answer, which is a diegetic piece of music. In the first chapter of the Kagura Project manga, we can see on Shintaro's computer screen that he's literally writing Tomei Answer, which means that the listener can hear the song and take it as the verbatim words that the character wrote himself. It shows not only what he feels, but how he feels, what he thinks about his past in his own terms. The music of I Want to Be Your Heart is by and large in this latter category. Recall that the song Yuma wrote and performed on the street was called Reason for Existence. Well, that's the name of one of the songs in episode Yuma. When the listener hears the song Reason for Existence, they're hearing the same sounds that Rino did that day. You hear Yuma's feelings, told directly as she feels them, as the song is written from her perspective. All of the songs in episode Rino, in turn, are the singles she released after becoming famous. The listener can hear these, look at the lyrics, and see the traces of Yuma in her music. They can see a lonely girl singing about being left behind. You don't have to take Rino's word for it when she says that she can't escape her love for Yuma. You can see it in the songs that she wrote, how every one is about that beautiful time in her life. Similarly, you don't need to imagine Yuma's despair in her final days. You can just listen to White Nights and see her battle her agony in song, rationalizing her decision to die. What this ultimately does is give the listener a strong sense of the girl's feelings. We only see the songs Rino wrote when she became famous. We only ever see a Rino lost in a world without Yuma, struggling to convince herself to keep living. In contrast, we get to see Yuma write songs at every step of her journey. Reason for Existence is her declaration to live before even meeting Rino. If shows her change her attitude. It shows her having found a reason to keep going because Rino changed her life, how that was enough for her if only they could have kept singing. And White Nights shows her at the end of the line, lost and pained before making the worst choice. This, I hope, justifies why the story is told as songs, but how are these songs a piece of music to begin with? Well, songwriter Yuri Cannon has a great sense for rock. Most of the music consists of rock songs with pretty heavy piano instrumentation, representing when Rino and Yuma would play piano and guitar together in school. White Nights is about in 3/4 time, but felt in 1, more like a waltz, as it dances through Yuma's darkest hours and highlights her twisted reliance on Rino. There are melodies that are repeated either identically or near identically, linking the songs together and offering leitmotifs representing the bond between the girls. In short, I think it's genius. The final song in I Want to Be Your Heart is a piece called Sing the Moon, which is performed by Rino but sung by Yuma. This song, along with Rain for a Flower, Song for You, are the only pieces of music which aren't explicitly diegetic, and this too is for a reason. Throughout it, Sing the Moon uses melodies from all of the songs from episode Rino, taking all of her pain and providing her ultimate answer to Yuma's question: why should you keep living? By having Yuma sing through Rino, it shows how she's keeping her alive inside of her. Rino is still the one actually performing the song, but we see how Yuma became one with her. While Yuma was wrong in taking her own life, she was right that she would live forever in the music Rino would compose. Yuma was so feverishly obsessed with her legacy and finding an answer, so wounded by her loss, that she took a rash and irrevocable course of action to live forever in her lover's heart, to hoist her up and force her to keep singing. What she didn't realize, or perhaps what she did realize but saw as an acceptable casualty, was that the one most destroyed by her loss would be the one that she loved most. Rino hated the world she saw as phony and twisted, a world where everyone desired love, but no one was willing to open up to another, and yet she still fell in love regardless. She saw hope in a girl who seemed to laugh in the face of despair, who met the darkness with song. No matter what sort of world we live in, I'm willing to live on if you're part of it. Even in that world which she despised, Rino was willing to live if Yuma was by her side. More than music, more than fame, more than money, more than dreams in the future, the only thing she needed was the girl who dreamt that music could save the world. Which is why it's so powerful that she lives even so. Rino takes Yuma's dreams and uses them to guide other people. She's able to keep living, remembering her loved one and hoping to make that awful world a better place. Because maybe music can't save the world, but Yuma's music definitely saved her. Flowers are a repeated image in I Want to Be Your Heart. When trying to get over stage fright, Yuma tells Rino to imagine the audience as flowers, to separate them and make it easier to sing. Throughout the series, you see this use of flowers everywhere. Flowers represent not only the audience, but the other. Rino hates the world, so she sees everyone but Yuma with a flower on their head. Only the girl she loved was able to break that shell. However, in the final song, Sing the Moon, the now popular musician Rino takes the stage to an audience of real people. She envisions Yuma in the stands, smiling at her, but she accepts that everyone around her is a person who thinks and feels just as she and Yuma did. A sign that she's overcome her fear, a sign that she's letting the world in. Rino is finally able to live with the answers that she found. Her reason for existence is to one day try to become someone's heart. In the lyrics of her songs, she sings about all of the things she wishes she could tell Yuma, all of the love that she can't give anymore. When Yuma sang Reason for Existence back when the girls met, she said, "I can't light up anyone's heart." It was a reflection of her fears for being useless and unneeded, the same fears that drove her off a ledge in the end. And in I Want to Be Your Heart, Rino replies, "Within my hell, you are my heart without fail." Yuma can't hear those words anymore, but someone else can, and that could make all of the difference. I Want to Be Your Heart is a story about hope. It's a story about how wounds heal. It's about finding a reason to live and choosing to love in spite of it all, and its finale, Sing the Moon, is the best song this year. I leave you now with the final words in the story, and hope Rino's message echoes on. What's more transparent than words? What's more resonant than thoughts? I wrote this trying to give it a form, because I decided I'd still be alive. Thank you.